My name's James. I'm the pastor here at Thrive Ministries. Here at Thrive, we want to be a community that is living to love, grow, and build into the things of God. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, we want to say welcome, welcome home, welcome to church.
Everybody just take a seat and grab your Bibles. We're going to go into the Word of God together. And we're so excited to keep continuing on with our current series, Unstoppable, which looks at the history of the church in Acts. So if you turn to Acts, we're going to read from chapter 17, verse 16. Follow along. Paul in Athens. Now while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with him, and some said, "What does this babbler wish to say?" Others said, "He seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities, because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection." And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, "May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? For you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these mean." Now all of the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. Paul addresses the Areopagus. So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring." Verse 29. "Being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of man. The times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed, and of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead." Now when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, "We will hear you again about this." So Paul went out from their midst, but some men joined him and believed, among whom also were Dionysius the Areopagite and a woman named Damaris, and others with them. Amen.
Amen. Can we just give Hien a hand as she continuously serves God? Honestly, to be honest, I don't say this enough, but she's the rock, my rock anyway. I'm so insecure without her, and I thank God for her. I'm only here because she prays for me, and she deals with all of my issues. And she's continuously serving, and even though she didn't just have a big breakfast, she's pregnant, all right? She's almost due, and so yeah, I really do thank God for her. So why don't we pray? Your presence here with us, Father. We acknowledge that even for those who do not know you this morning, Father, they know that there is a sense of that there is a living God here moving and working. And so, Father, I pray this morning that your will be done. Not my will, Father. That your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven this morning, as we continue to worship you, as we continue to come before you and hear what you have to say to us. Father, would you take me out of the way, and would you speak to your people this morning, that they would not rely on the wisdom of man, Father, but that I can come here by your Spirit and in your power, Father, so that our faith this morning will not rest in the wisdom of man, but in the power of God. This is our prayer this morning. And so we ask you for attentiveness, we ask you for strength as we continue to worship you this morning. I pray all of this in Jesus' name. And everybody says, Amen. Well, we want to welcome you again this morning. If you haven't been back to church for a while and you are here, again, we are so glad that you're here. If you are new, first time here, again, we are so thankful to see your faces. If you're watching online, because we're also presenting this online, we want to say hello, and we are so glad that you are watching us on the line, which is really different now. But a couple of years back, I was walking out of the car park, our church car park, and this little boy, he lives in the neighborhood, he was riding his bike around, and he comes up to me and he goes, "What do you guys do in there?" Pointing at our big brown building. "What do you guys do in there?" And I was just like, I was a bit shocked, and I said, the three basic answers: Jesus, God, the Bible. Right? That's what we do. Jesus, God, the Bible in there, and we learn about stories like Adam and Eve. And he just looked at me blankly, and I was like, okay, he doesn't know about Adam and Eve. Surely he knows about cute animals on a boat, Noah's Ark. So we learn about Noah's Ark, and he just stared at me blankly. No idea who Adam and Eve was, no idea what Noah's Ark was, and it just hit me that we live in an age right now where kids growing up, if no one tells them, they have no idea about what the Bible says, they have no idea about God, they have no idea about Jesus. A couple of years back at work, I was talking to a young guy in his early 20s, and he had grown up in a Christian home, parents who served God and did everything in ministry, and he grew up in that, and I spoke to him and he goes to me, I think there are some good things about Christianity, there's some good things about the Bible, but I don't think it's true. It's not real. And it just hit me. Now, we are living in an age right now, and I don't think that that's uncommon. I think that's the most common thing in our culture today, that young people are turning their back on God, they're turning their back on faith, they're turning back on religion and going, it's not true. Yeah, you guys hear me? Because when you look at our cultural landscape right now, churches are in decline. The people in the churches are getting older. Maybe not ours, but if you look at a lot of churches, they're getting older. There's more white hairs than black hairs, right? They're dying off, and people are not identifying with being called a Christian. And the view is today, if you go out into the streets, if you go out into our neighbours, the view is today that we don't need God, we don't need faith, we don't need religion anymore. And this began in the 17th, 18th century, the Enlightenment. Humanity is advancing in science and technology and education, and will progress to a point where we will achieve human perfection and a human utopia. Do you guys feel that? Do you guys see that right now? That's if you go on and you knock on someone's door and you ask them, what do you think about Christianity? We don't need that anymore. We are progressing and we are moving towards a place of human perfection and a human utopia, a human paradise. We don't need religion. We don't need faith anymore. That is what the culture is looking like. But can you see that view is based on the biblical narrative of human redemption? That view is going, hey, we can achieve all the things that the Bible is talking about without God. We can have the kingdom of God on earth without the king. But here's the thing. Because of sin, if there is no king, there is no human flourishing. That's the problem. If there is no king, if God's presence is not here on earth, there is no human flourishing. We can pretend as much as we want that we are progressing and we are moving. Yes, scientifically. Yes, technology. But morally, you look at the human heart and it's the same as what it was 2,000 years ago, thousands of years ago. You look at happiness, look at any study on happiness, there is no guarantee that we are happier today than those people who were living thousands of years ago. And so my question to you this morning is that if that is what the world is looking, if that is what the culture, if that is the culture that we are in, how do we respond to this as the church? How do we respond? Do we just hide away and accept that this is what the world is doing, that it thinks that it can continually progress morally and in all those ways without the King, without God? Do we just hide back? Do we just all gather in this place every week, get old and die out? Does that sound like a good plan? Yes? No? What do we do? Here's the thing. When we look at history, it's at precisely these moments in history. It's precisely at these moments when the church is being pushed back to the outskirts, when the culture is being shaken up, that God moves again. That is what history shows us. We are not in a unique time. It's just going back around and around and around again, and God continues to pour out His Spirit again. Whenever the church is pushed back, whenever the church is not at the forefront, God moves again. And my question to you this morning is, do you want to be a part of that? Do you want to be a part of God's moving again in this world? Yes? You don't look excited to, but I do. And I hope that we can, as a church, be a part of this movement of God. And so the question for us this morning is how? How do we as the church approach this post-Christian secular culture? How do we do it? People no longer believe in God. People don't care about Christianity. How do we then approach it? As he had mentioned before, we're in this series called Unstoppable, and it feels like it's unstoppable because we're now in like our 13th week, and we're still going. We're still going, but we're looking at the history of the church and how the church continued to keep going forward despite all of the odds. And right here in Acts chapter 17, as he had just read, Paul is facing the exact situation that we're facing. We saw last week how the non-Jews were allowed to enter into the church. Their conditions for allowing people who were not Jewish to enter into the church. And so they figured that out, and it's by grace that you are saved. And so Paul now goes out, and he comes through some unfortunate circumstances. He finds himself in a city called Athens. Athens in Greece. And he's pushed there, and he's waiting there for his friends Silas and Timothy, because he had to escape from these people, and now he's waiting there. And so he begins exploring this beautiful city. He's been to Athens, by the way. Put your hand up. 1, 3. Yeah? 3 or 4 of you. I've been to Athens on Google Map, and it's a beautiful city. If you don't know anything about Athens, is at the time when Paul arrives in Athens, there's no Christians there. No one gives anything about the Bible. No one cares about God or Jesus or anything like that. You see, the thing about Athens at this time was, even though it was ruled by the Romans, they were the intellectual powerhouse of the world. It's like they were if you can imagine all the Ivy League schools like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, the ones in England like Cambridge and Oxford. If you can imagine all of them combined in one spot, that was Athens at the time. You had guys like Plato, those philosophers, Plato, Socrates, who grew up there. You had guys like Aristotle that lived in Athens. These guys formed a lot of the thinking behind our Western world today. These guys formed a lot of democracy views that we have today. And so Paul was entering into a place that did not care about God, and the people were going, we could just figure this all out ourselves. We don't need religion. We don't need faith. We don't need God. We can figure this out ourselves. And so this morning, if you just hang with me, I just want to give you 5 steps. 5 steps for how we are to approach our culture. Our post-Christian secular culture. Ooh. So let's go. Verse 16. Now, while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. So Paul, he gets to Athens, he's waiting for a mate, right? It's Silas and Timothy. And then he goes, you know what? I'm going to look around in the city. Now, Paul could have done what a lot of us would do. Go and check out the awesome sights of the city. Go and take a selfie in front of the statues. Go and get some baklava. Go to the cheeky Greek and eat a gyros. You go around exploring the beautiful city that he had heard of growing up. He could have done all of those things, but what does he do? But what happens to him? It says his spirit was provoked within him. And that literally means, it's like the word is, it's like this continuous sense. It's like someone grabbing a stick and just poking at you in your rib, right? Just continuously. And it's like he was getting provoked. And he was growing, the image is like he's growing in anger. This brewing anger, this brewing discontentment. It's like watching the Crows play. And every time they drop the ball or kick a point, it's like this growing discontentment with what they are doing. What are you doing? And this was Paul's spirit. It was getting provoked in him as he was walking around the city of Athens. And why? Because he saw that the city was full of what? Idols. It was said that in Athens, at the time, it was easier to run into an idol than into a person. That's how many idols were around him. Everywhere he looked, Paul would see an idol. And so he was discontent. There was a holy discontent in him as he witnessed people giving their devotion, their time, their money, their honor to these empty statues, to these empty idols, rather than the one and only living God. And his spirit was provoked in him. There was this holy discontent in his heart. I know of this woman that, her whole life, she had grown up, she had married this man, she had raised up these kids, she worked hard, hours after long hours to support the family, to cover for a lot of her husband's mistakes, and she would keep working, she'd keep raising, she'd keep doing the best that she can for her family. And then one day, she goes and she hears his phone ringing, and she hears his phone beeping, and she goes and she picks up his phone, and she sees that he has been with another woman. He's been texting, he's been sleeping with, he has been speaking to another woman. That man should have had his heart moved towards his wife who had given everything for him and his family. And yet what does he do? He turns around and he pursues something so cheap and so unworthy. And this was Paul's heart as he saw people pursuing such cheap and unworthy things rather than the one and only living God. Why? He's provoked to go, why? Why are you looking at these created things? Why are you chasing and pursuing these created things rather than the Creator himself? And so that, just like Paul, if we are going to approach and enter into this culture that we are living in, we must begin with a holy discontent. Now we might look at Adelaide and Australia and go, well, I walk down Rundle Mall and I don't see any idols anywhere. You know, Paul was talking about all these idols that he saw, but I don't see any idols anywhere. But oh, how blinded we are. You see, idols. Idols are anything. This is what Pastor Timothy Keller says. An idol is whatever you look at and say in your heart of hearts, if I have that, then I'll feel my life has meaning. Then I'll know I have value. Then I'll feel significant and secure. That's what an idol is. An idol goes, if I had that one, if I had that thing and that thing and that thing, that's what's going to give my life meaning. That's what's going to give my life value and significance and security. It could be a relationship. It could be status. It could be money. It could be a career. An idol is anything we take and make it more important than God. That's what an idol is. Anything that we can take and make it more important than God. And so if we look around in our culture today, if we look around in our city today, there are idols absolutely everywhere. And so my question to you this morning is, are you discontent with the state of our world right now? Are you discontent of our world bowing down to false idols? Or are you too busy enjoying the scenery? Are you too busy eating the baklava? Taking selfies at the statues? Are you discontent with the injustices and brokenness that is coming out of our culture as it bows down to these idols rather than to the one and only living God? Are you discontent with the church as it fails to be released into its full potential, and as it also bows down to the idols of our culture? Are you discontent with your own life as you also have been bowing down and filling your life with these idols? That is my question to you. And it's often, if we are not burdened by our culture, that we've actually been blinded by it. But you see, Paul doesn't stop there. Not only does he start with a holy discontent for the culture that he's in, he goes on In verse 17, it says, he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with him, and some said, what does this babbler wish to say? Do you know what babbler was to them? It was like a bird that picked over leftover stuff. They were like, you're a babbler. You're just picking up leftover thoughts from other people and putting it together. Others said he seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection. And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, may we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? For you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean. And this is probably one of the most cultural verses in the whole Bible. Verse 21, now all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. That's all they did. They didn't care about truth. All they wanted to do was hear something new. And you see, Paul not only has a holy discontent for the culture that he is living in, but what does he do? He also engages with the culture. He doesn't shy away. He doesn't retreat. He doesn't admit defeat. He doesn't question his own life, his own faith. He engages right with the culture. And he goes right into their cultural hub. In verse 17 there, it says he went into the marketplace every day. And when we think marketplace, what are we thinking? Like Central Market, people yelling at you $2 for fruit, for a kilo of apples, something like that, it's dirty, it's dusty. But the marketplace, and this is actually a picture of the Agora. That's a picture of the Agora in Athens. So Paul was actually walking in this place, and the Agora, the marketplace, was the actual cultural hub at the time. And what I mean by that is you combine Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat in the one place, it's the Agora. That's where you hear the latest news. They didn't have phones back then. There would be people at the Agora yelling out the news. This is what we've heard. There would be people, what Socrates would do back in like the early BCs, he would come to the Agora and he would start teaching his things. This is where you came to learn new things, came to discover new things, to debate ideas, and Paul was right in their cultural hub. He engaged right with their culture and began speaking God's truth. He would reason with. It says he would reason with. You see, our faith shouldn't be based on blindness and blind faith. We need to have reasons for it. We can't just believe because our parents believe. We need to understand our reasons for it, and he uses reason to engage with people like the Epicureans and the Stoics. Now, who are the Epicureans? Who are the Stoics? When I begin to explain them, you begin to hear some commonality with today. The Epicureans were basically those who said, YOLO. To sum it up in one word, YOLO, right? There's God, but he doesn't care about earth anymore. The earth was an accident. No, God doesn't care about us. You're there by chance. You're there by accident. And so go and just pursue whatever you can to bring you pleasure and happiness. That was their view. When you die, that's it. Follow and pursue pleasure, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. YOLO. The Stoics, on the other hand, they were like, we got to control what we can with our discipline and our rationality. We must rely on our own thinking and our own abilities to get through this world because we can't control it. We're going to do it ourselves. And those are the two sides. And right there, Paul is speaking right into their worldview, right into their philosophies. He's engaging with the culture. And so what should we do? We should also engage. We should build relationships. We should listen and understand what are people saying. And we also need to be serving our culture. That's the second thing. The third thing is this. Not only do we need to engage with our culture, we need to understand the culture. Paul in verse 22 says, so Paul standing in the midst of the Areopagus. So when Paul is speaking, they call it, this is the Areopagus in Greek, in Athens. This is a place. It's like a TED Talk. You guys know what a TED Talk is? Right? They basically call him to a TED Talk, but in front of the most powerful intellectual people in the world at the time. It's like if someone called you to a university to talk in front of all the lecturers there. That's what Paul is doing as he's going to the Areopagus. And so he says, so Paul standing in the midst of the Areopagus said, men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription. To the unknown God. So Paul, he's walking around and he observes their culture and he understands their culture. He goes up to them and he goes, I see you're very religious. I can see all your statues around. You're very religious. And I also came across this altar that said, to the unknown God. And he's going, you guys want to appease the God so much that you've made an altar for a God just in case you haven't covered them all. That's the thinking behind this unknown God. You've got to have a one to the unknown God, because if you miss out on the unknown God, your life is going to go to ruins. And that's what he understood their culture. He knew that it was the gods, the temples they thought that the gods, the temples controlled the outcomes of their lives. And if they didn't do the right thing with the gods, if they didn't appease all the gods, they would be in trouble. And he understood that. He understood that they wanted to worship and appease the gods, to connect with the transcendent. And so likewise, we must also look around and identify the cultural images and idols in our own culture. We must identify what the culture is actually doing in our own hearts, the deep cries in our own hearts. Do you guys remember Jenny and Johnny from last week? Yeah. Let's do a Stanley. But if you look at our culture right now, what is the storyline? What is the storyline that is being pushed in front of us right now? Dan B. McAdams, he's a psychologist, and he says, this is the picture of secular salvation. This is the salvation story for those who do not believe in God right now. And the first one is this. The first step is this. And you'll see it everywhere in our world right now. The first step is this. You were born innocent and happy. Life is an accident. You are here by chance, so you were born innocent and happy. But bad things, bad experiences, tradition, religion, family has placed burdens on you, has restricted you, has bound you up. And so you're not happy and you're not innocent anymore. And so you need to free yourself from these things so that you can discover yourself again. Don't you hear that all the time? I just need to be myself. I need to discover myself. I need to go on a retreat and discover myself again. And then how do we discover ourselves again? We discover ourselves again by finding a missing element. A soulmate. A meaningful career. Enjoyable experiences. Material things. Self-expression. We can fill our lives with these things, and that's how we find meaning and pleasure. Do you guys see that? I look at it, I see it in, if you look at The Voice or Australian Idol, there is always, guaranteed, if there's always a sob story. Yeah? Is it just me? Right? It always begins with a sob story. Right? They were here and now they've had all these things happen to them, but here they are throwing those things off, and now they have a chance to be free and successful and to be a superstar. If only they would, if you just believe in yourself, you can do anything. That's the storyline. You look at Bachelors in Paradise. Who watches Bachelors in Paradise? Be honest. Put your hand up. No, just me. Alright, just me. I'll put my hand down. I watch it for research purposes. Anyways, you watch Bachelors in Paradise. What are they doing? They're leaving the constraints of the world. They're leaving their workplace, all the things that bind them, and they're entering to this paradise, this place where they can just drink as much as they want. They can just wear a swimsuit every day and swim in the ocean. And not only that, find someone who will love them for who they are. And the thing is, that's the storyline, but who doesn't want that? Yeah? Who doesn't want to overcome all the odds and barriers over their life and be set free and believe and just and do it because they've believed in themselves? Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to go somewhere unrestrained by anything of the world and find love and just be there with this person that you love and they love you? Who doesn't want that? And that's what we need to do. We need to understand our culture. This is what the culture is crying out for. All of these things. And so Paul goes on. And not only does he understand the culture, he begins to expose the culture. He says, to the unknown God, what therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. So Paul goes up to them and he goes, I understand your cry. I understand what you were chasing after. But he goes, your story is incomplete. You are fearful and you are anxious, trying to appease a God that you don't even know. How can you worship a God that you don't even know? Your story is not complete. And here's the thing that we need to understand. Any cultural system. There's nothing wrong with culture, by the way. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the things in our culture, food and going out and all of those things. The problem is when we bow down to those things, when we make them our idols. And so any system that tries to run without God will come to a point where it will break down. A car that runs on the wrong oil will ultimately, the engine will smoke up and it will break down. And we are beginning to see the fruits of that in our culture already today. If you look at The Voice and The Idol, an Australian Idol, and that storyline of believe in yourself, what happens? There's these guys and girls that come in and they can play a song on the guitar like ding, 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 and sing, but the reality is they can't even sing. Bunches of people, heaps and heaps of people that come in and they want to be set free and they want to be the star, but they can't even sing. But they're definitely believing in themselves. The thing is, even if you win, no one remembers you, right? But that, I mean, guys are Dutch. The others, I don't know. But yeah, that's the thing. And then you look at Bachelors in Paradise. Like one of the girls in there, I remember one specific bit where she's like, I'm in here again. I'm in paradise again and again. And every time I'm getting rejected. I just want somebody. No, but I can't even get past the first date. And she's there, she's crying. Nobody wants me. Nobody loves me. And there's a guy there, I swear, he's been there every season. Right? That one guy, I don't even know his name, but it's like, I've seen you. You've been to paradise and back again, trying to find something. And so we need to expose our culture. There is a cry in your heart for those things. And who doesn't want those things? Who doesn't want love? Who doesn't want security? Who doesn't want to discover themselves and be free? But you can't find that in what you're looking for. And like I said last week, the secular culture is undergoing a massive phobo shock. Fear of better options. You see the Bachelors of Paradise, right? They're waiting there and they're going, man, there's no guys in here for me. There's no girls in here for me. But there's probably one going to be coming soon. Right? There's going to be fear of better options. We are facing choice anxiety in our world right now. We don't know what to choose. Remember, young people, we don't know what career to go on to. There's so many things to choose because we need to find the right thing to express ourselves and show the world how awesome we are. And so we're facing choice anxiety. We have endless ways of pursuing pleasure and pursuing our desires, but our lives are miserable and anxious. That is what the culture is coming to. You look at mental health. You look at just in the coronavirus. I was watching on the news the other day. 1,000 people have committed suicide during the coronavirus. And so we're in this culture of people trying to free themselves from all of these traditions and cultures and values and set themselves free, but at the same time, it's putting this massive pressure on us. This huge burden on our lives. And so a lot of us are sitting there and going, I don't want to try. We're jealous of the people that have achieved all these things, and we're bitter at our own lives because we can't live up to them. Did you know that in the last 3 years, in America, in the UK, the life expectancy has dropped? Life expectancy has actually gone down. And so that view of us progressing and moving forward is a myth. Right? It's going down. Life expectancy is going down. Why? Because people are committing suicide more than ever. We are connected to so many things, social media, all those things, yet loneliness is an epidemic at the moment. And so what we need to do is we need to expose the culture. Expose the reality of our culture. And lastly, if you go to the next slide. Lastly, we need to reveal the gospel. Paul, right at the end, begins to deliver this amazing speech. And it's been studied and studied over and over again. I don't have enough time to go through it, but I'll almost finish. He begins by pushing directly against the idols. He goes, the God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man. Paul goes right up to these people, these Epicureans, and he goes, your life is not an accident. Your life is not here by chance. There is a creator God. There is a creator God who is not limited by temples. He is not made by us. We can't put him in a box. Paul goes on, he goes, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. God is the sustainer of all of life. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need you to keep offering sacrifices to him and make him happy and feed him with food and wash him and clean him. He doesn't need you to do that. In fact, you are dependent on him. He goes on in verse 26 and he said, and he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him, yet he is actually not far from each one of us. And he begins to quote their own poets. He says, in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. Verse 29, being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone or money or career or image, but we're an image formed by the art and imagination of man. He says straight out the truth. God is the ruler of all things. He puts nations where they are supposed to be. And he uses their own poets. He uses their own cultural texts and images to reveal to them that God is the father of human beings. And the reason he has placed people in these different places all over the world is that they would seek him and that they would know him. And you see, this God is deeply personal. And he wants a relationship with you. We don't make an image out of God. He has made us in his image. In verse 30, the times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. And the truth Paul reveals to them is that judgment is coming. No one will escape. All of our secrets will be revealed. There will be no possibility of God forgetting something that has been done wrong. You will not escape. You will not get away with it. God is ruler. He is the creator. And he will come again in judgment. And in verse 31, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. Jesus is the one we need to worship and appease. So turn away from your idols. He's telling the Athenians. And he's saying the exact same thing to us today. Believing in yourself is not enough. In fact, it can deceive us like those people who go up and sing out of tune. It can deceive us to thinking that we are better than we really are. And just as the judges like Simon Cowell cringe and give those people a reality check, it's the same with Jesus. He comes and he gives you and I a reality check. We are out of tune with God. We are out of tune with how he has designed us and for us to live. And he has sent Jesus to save us from ourselves. And so we need to trust and not believe in ourselves, but to believe in him. It is true what Augustine said, that our hearts will only find rest when it has found its rest in God. That is God's truth. And so, church, as we wrap up, I look at myself, I look at the state of the church, I look at the state of the world, and there is a huge, huge mountain to climb. Often of times, I feel like not rocking up on a Sunday and going, hey guys, just watch the screen. Watch something on the screen. But it's at that exact position. That's where God begins to move. It's at the end of ourselves, church, when we see the mountain ahead of us, that God begins to start working. Because we aren't enough. And we are not worthy to serve him. And so we need him. We need his presence. And so let us, as a church, lay down our idols and be his image bearers. Let us carry his presence into the culture and into the world. And let us begin with a holy discontent. Let us engage the culture. Let us understand the culture and reveal the gospel. Why don't you stand and let me pray. Thank you for this time. Father, continue to reveal the deceptiveness in our own hearts. Father, again, would you hide me behind the cross? Would your spirit go forth and convict, transform, move in whoever you need to this morning? I pray for renewal in the individual hearts, Father, so that when we gather, Father, there will be a revival. Because our only hope is in you and in you alone. In Jesus' name I pray.